said, we're going to talk about alternative to Google Analytics for today. And even though I have never been a huge fan of Google Analytics, we are here today because Google has recently updated their analytics platform and nobody likes it. Frankly, they really shot themselves in the foot with this one. No one I speak to in SEO or marketing enjoys this platform at all. So a lot of people are interested in learning about alternatives. I was already exploring alternatives because I'm interested in data privacy, which Google Analytics is terrible about. But I've done some more research in that area because more and more people I know are asking for recommendations because they simply find Google Analytics to be really overwhelming. So let's jump in. So a little bit about me. Told you some of this already. I have been working in SEO since 2010, so I've used like pretty much every iteration of Google Analytics that has existed. Google Analytics 4, the current one, is by far the worst in my personal opinion. So Google Analytics started to become the standard that we all use. And that started after it launched in 2005. Really, by the time 2012 rolled around, it was pretty baked in to most businesses that were starting to think about SEO and could they use their website to get more people and more traffic and more leads. And in 2012, Google launched something called Universal Analytics. So if you used Google Analytics at all in the past few years, you used Universal Analytics. This is what most people are referring to when they just say Google Analytics. Very few people ever like differentiated them. And it was pretty user friendly. You might have tried it in the past. You could create reports. You could see where people were moving around on your website, where they were clicking, where people were coming from. Everybody really liked it. But in 2020, Apple decided they were going to stop tracking cookies on iOS and Safari. So those are little packets of information that get downloaded onto your device and allow platforms like Google Analytics to track you around the internet. That's why you see ads that, you're looking at, say, shoes on a website, and then you go look up movie times, and suddenly there's an ad for those shoes. That's due to these cookies. So Google said, hey, Apple said, hey, we're not going to allow this kind of tracking on our devices anymore. And a few months later, Google announced that there was going to be a new version of Google Analytics. It was no longer going to rely on the cookie, the same data tracking method that the old version did. So eventually we were all going to have to switch over. And nothing happened right then because, we all had a lot of other things to worry about in 2020. But over the next 3 years, Google continued to move forward with creating this new version of Google Analytics. It doesn't take away tracking. It's how Google Analytics always works. There is a packet of information that's associated with the people coming to your website, and it enables them to get information about where those people are going, where they've been, and what actions they're taking online. Google is calling it something else, and they are kind of couching it in language that makes it sound very privacy friendly, but it's not. Countries in the EU, which has very strong privacy regulations, have some issues with the way this form of Google Analytics operates. But here we are. Google's rolled it out, and they've turned off the old version of Google Analytics. So if you used to use Google Analytics and you haven't logged in maybe like 4 to 6 months, if you were to log in right now, your old Google Analytics account would not be doing anything. It's completely stopped collecting any data from your website. It just exists. And the big thing that I think they messed up on, and a lot of people hate, is that Google did not migrate your old analytics data to new Google Analytics. So you fire up this new Google Analytics 4, they're calling it, and you're just presented with a blank screen. There's no way to take your old data and add it in and see it alongside your new data. And that's problematic for a lot of marketers. They need to be able to see historical trends and patterns. And we're talking about 11 years or more worth of data that suddenly you can't easily look at anymore. So a lot of Google Analytics alternatives are starting to crop up and step into that gap. And, to this point, analytics has really had a chokehold on digital marketing. There've been a few competitors, but, for the better part of the past 10 years, it was really just Google Analytics. That is all people use. Some of those alternatives that we're going to talk about have existed, several years ago. Others are brand new. We'll talk about what the benefits are of each one. So, and I have this in a PDF, so I can share it afterwards if you want to see this slide, but this runs down quite a few common analytics alternatives that you have at your disposal. So the first two, Fathom Analytics and Plausible, we're going to talk a little more in depth about these today. These are very lightweight. They're very user-friendly, very easy to understand. They are the kind of thing that no matter what kind of experience you have with Google Analytics in the past, you can install these on your website and you're going to be able to quickly figure out what's going on. It's also a good choice for marketers who want to give their clients a way to look at and understand their own website analytics. Fathom and Plausible are much, 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 much easier for the average non-marketing user to understand than Google would be. So I recommend these anyway. I've been recommending Fathom for a couple years now. I think it's very easy for people to use and really be able to get insights out of their data, which is the whole point that we're using these tools. Matomo is another one. It's similar to Fathom and Plausible. Which again, we'll look at these some more as we go through. This is unique in that it's one of the only options that you can fully self-host. So if you do work in development, or you know someone who works in development and website hosting, and this is really important to you to be able to have complete control over your data, then you are going to want to look at Matomo because it is something you can self-host and it's open source. You can look at the code, you can understand the code. Adobe Analytics is another alternative that has been around for quite some time. This is one of the earliest Google Analytics alternatives, and it is very, very robust. It's very expensive too. You have to contact them for pricing. We all know that normally means it's going to be several dollar signs, and it's typically used by large enterprises. If you work at, say, or run, say, a large e-commerce company, Adobe Analytics would be a good choice. But it's outside of the price range for a lot of people who are working at smaller businesses or working by themselves individually with clients. And some other alternatives that we'll talk about is simply not using an analytics tool at all. You can actually do quite a bit without it. You can use an SEO tool. Some common ones are Moz, Ahrefs, SEMrush. These are all tools that people like myself who do SEO for clients use to see what people are searching online and what they're interested in. And this data is not associated with a particular user. Like I can't see, say, what Tina did if she was, searching for shoes online. I can't, and I worked at that shoe website. I can't see like what Tina clicked on or what she did or what she didn't do. But rather, I can just see that people like her, maybe people living in her location, people with a similar financial and demographic background, they're all interested in certain topics. So these tools can help you get information about what your audience is interested in, what people who are finding your website are searching online, without getting into the whole tracking and understanding analytics and installing code on your website to follow people around. It's very straightforward. These tools are kind of expensive, but if you're like a very multi-purpose marketing individual, it can be really useful to have these either way, because you'll probably find several areas of your business that they can be helpful with. And if you mostly used Google Analytics to see what actions people were taking on your website, you can use a tool called Hotjar. It's super creepy, honestly. It's not one to pick if you are interested in alternatives due to privacy concerns, but it will show you exactly what people are clicking on your website, including making recordings of them moving their mouse around the screen. So, if you're doing something, if we're on a site where there's a lot of funnels, like a lot of sales funnels that you're launching and trying to make sure they're working and converting, a tool like Hotjar is probably actually going to be more useful to you than Google Analytics would have been at all. And lastly, you can just do nothing. And we will talk a little bit about why and when that might be appropriate, why you might not use an analytics tool at all. So the first one we're going to go a little more in depth on is Fathom. This is one of the first Google Analytics alternatives that I came across that was actually very privacy focused. And I used to have this installed on my website before I decided to forego analytics tools at all. And it's pretty nice. It does not track your visitors around the web. So you can technically put it on your website and not have to have one of those fun little cookie pop-ups at the bottom. You can see where people are coming from. It does record, say if they came from Google search or from Facebook, but it's not going to give you any information about what they're doing online beyond that. And it's not going to show your website and say any ads to those people later on. It's strictly so you can see what's happening on your website. You can track what Fathom is calling events. Previously, we usually called those conversions in Google Analytics, such as someone clicking to download a white paper, signing up for an email list, whatever it may be. You can set up what these actions are and see how many people are taking them on a given day, week, month, year. You can see what kinds of devices people are searching for. That's helpful. So you know that if most of your visitors are coming from a desktop site versus a mobile site, that might influence some of your website choices. And a really big one is you can import your data from the old Google Analytics. So if you or anyone you know is just having a really hard time with Google Analytics right now as they're switching things over, and it's like, I want my old data, I want to see it. Fathom has a tool that lets you connect your Google Analytics account and you can pull in all of your historic GA data and you can see it alongside the new information that's coming in, which is really nice. And it's going to give a lot more people control over their data and allow them to continue to make marketing insights without being wholly dependent on what Google decides it will generously drip out to them. Fathom also retains your data forever as long as you're a paying customer, so you do not have to worry about running into storage limits or losing any of your information. You can keep going back in that history. As I mentioned before, it's very clean and simple. So like this right here, this screenshot is what Fathom looks like. Everything's clearly labeled. Like I'm pretty confident that I could hand a Fathom report off to someone who wasn't familiar with any kind of SEO or website analytics. And while I might have to explain a little bit about maybe what bounce rate was or what event meant, they'd pretty quickly be able to understand what was happening. And you can still create tracked links for various campaigns. Like if you want to A/B test different ad copy that you have going out, you can create different UTM links to go with each one and track those in Fathom. Fathom is hosted in the cloud. It costs about $14 a month to get its full functionality. If you are interested in hosting it yourself, they do have a very light version. It's not going to be suitable for, say, someone who's working as a web designer or running a marketing agency and building websites for a lot of clients. But if you just want to install it and look at it on your own website that's not getting a ton of traffic, just so you can kind of keep a pulse on how things are going, that would be a completely acceptable option.
Hey, Emily, quick question. What do they charge for that self-hosted version? Do you know?
The self-hosted one is free.
Thanks.
You're welcome. That was a good question. Another one that's very similar to Plausible with a few different, similar to Fathom, sorry, with a few differences is Plausible. And I'm highlighting Fathom and Plausible on our call today because I think these are going to be the most broadly applicable to everyone here and everyone who you might be working with. So Plausible will let you see the same kinds of metrics as Fathom. You can still bring in your old Google Analytics data, which again is great. You can track campaign links. You can see what kinds of events and actions people are taking on your site, and they hold on to your data, which is also just like Fathom. One really notable thing about Plausible is it is compliant with GDPR and CCPA, so it's the European and California privacy regulations. While Fathom is very privacy friendly, they don't necessarily fully comply with that, but Plausible is hosted in the EU, and they state upfront that they are very compliant with GDPR and CCPA. So if you or someone you know is in a field, an industry that's very highly regulated, even if you're not doing a lot of business in the EU, if you're working in, say, something like healthcare that's very highly regulated, looking for a solution like Plausible, which really has a lot of privacy controls, restrictions, and limitations, that could be a really good option. And Plausible is also very affordable. After this, if you were to take the slides and go back and look at that chart, the table of the different possible analytics options. This is the most affordable cloud hosted one. It is about $9 a month, and that price can increase if you're working with a lot of different sites. You have a lot of traffic coming into your site, but its core plan that's going to be useful for most people just starting out with the tool is $9 a month. Plausible does not have a self-hosted option. So if you really are interested in self-hosting, Matomo, which we're not going deep into today, but you should definitely check it out. That one is the most robust self-hosted version. That's going to be more appropriate for people who are working on multiple websites, say for clients. But like Rick just asked, Fathom's very light self-hosted version is free, so you could certainly play around with that on your website if you're comfortable with hosting. And the other option I wanted to dig into today was just doing nothing, which sounds weird, I know, coming from someone who works in SEO, but you might not actually need an SEO tool. So we have all been told that we do. And some companies really, truly do need Google Analytics. I used to work for some large e-commerce companies, and we needed that. We needed to know what's going into a shopping cart, what's getting abandoned, what is getting clicked in an email, and what is its conversion rate. There was so much data around our products. Google Analytics was just the best way to organize it. And I'm sure it still would be today if I was still working in that field. But for the rest of us, it's not always necessary. I tell people to really think about a few things. So first off, think about what is your goal and go beyond whatever the metric is. You could say, okay, well, my goal is to know how many people are coming to my website. Well, why? What are you going to do with that? If you really just want to know how many people are coming to your website, that's fine. You can do that with a privacy focused tool like Plausible or Fathom, but you can also do that by working with someone who has access to an SEO tool like Moz or Ahrefs. I have access to those tools, or get a subscription yourself. They can start, like Ahrefs actually has a free version that you can install on your own website and look at your own website data, and that'll give you an estimate of how many people are visiting your site every month and where it's appearing in search. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be enough of a ballpark for most people to be able to get the general insights they need to make marketing decisions. Next question is, how often do you actually use Google Analytics? The amount of times I'm talking to someone about their website and I say, okay, do you have a Google Analytics account? And they say, I think so, maybe, I'm not sure. It happens all the time. So you really have to be honest with yourself about how often are you actually going in there and using it and putting its data points to use. And if your answer is not often, well, then the next thing to think about is why. Is it because it feels too complex? If it does feel too complex, which is what a lot of people are feeling right now about this new version, then looking at Fathom or Plausible is going to be a better solution because it's a lot simpler. And when you feel comfortable with the data, you're going to actually use it more and get actionable insights that are going to help your business. But if you just don't actually know how you use the data, then maybe you don't need an analytics tool. And then what is the most,
So a question on that too. So do you ever practice where you'll just turn it on and turn it off? Like, say, for example, okay, I got a million things to do, but right now I want to focus on my marketing campaign. So I want to gather some analytics and then run it for a while. And then, so maybe run it once or twice a year or something like that, where you're turning it on and maybe paying the subscription fee or not, or do you need to run it continuously?
If you're going to use it, you should run it continuously.
Right.
Turning it on and off is really going to give you like a very small sample. So if you decide, going through these questions, that there are metrics that truly are important to your marketing decisions, then I would say run it all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So like, what would be the number one thing that you could see if you could see any data point? Because not all tools are going to show you the same data points. So like, if you really want to know how people are moving through a flow on your website, like they're clicking on the home page and then they're clicking to the about page, and then where do they go from there? And from there, if that's the most important to you, then maybe you actually don't need a full analytics tool, but you can get those insights from something like Hotjar, which does tracking around your website and shows you exactly where people are going. And Can't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure I know they used to have a free plan. I'm pretty sure Hotjar still has a limited free plan. So it's something that if you're just putting it on your website or individual client sites, you might be able to play around with and get some insights at a very low or negligible cost. And lastly, do you have money for a Google Analytics alternative? Because unfortunately, most of them are paid. But what it really comes down to is with Google, their services are free for the most part because our data and our clients' data is the currency. So we are essentially paying them in information for access to tools. And those tools are wrapped up as being helpful for us, but Google basically dictates how online marketing works. They create the number one tool for it, and then they require us to give them information in exchange. So if you don't have the money for a Google Analytics alternative, that's okay. I'm not here to say there's anything wrong or bad with continuing to use GA. If that really is the best for you for any reason in terms of its functionality or just its cost, I totally understand. But if you have the ability to put some money each month towards an alternative, I think that the benefits from it in the long run are going to be really great because one, you're going to be able to see all of your data in one place. Two, you're going to be very respectful of your clients' data, whether they know it or not. I think we can all use a little more data privacy in our lives, and I could go on about that. That's a whole topic for another day. And you have a little more control over your data. The tools like Plausible and Fathom, they make it a little easier to export your data, keep it in a raw format. You're not entirely locked in and walled into Google's ecosystem, which they can choose to change anytime, as we see they did when they turned off the old version of GA that everyone liked and walled off the data. So that was very quick. I don't want to keep us over our time limit here. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Over my website, I publish some more updates in this vein, and I am of course happy to take any questions that anyone has now.
I have more questions, but anybody else go first, please.
Oh, yeah, I've got a question.
Mhm.
Or yes, I have a few, but so just out of the, kind of looking at the different alternatives or going to the no analytics sort of option,
Mhm.
was there anything that that stood out to you that you missed, that you had with analytics? If there was a biggest thing that maybe you felt like you were missing out on by not having Google Analytics, is there something that you could point to?
Yeah, so for me, I'm not running an e-commerce for my website. I'm not selling anything. It's very much information that I'm providing to the public. The one thing I miss, which I had taken all analytics tools off my website, but I am thinking about adding Plausible back in as my new analytics tool because I would like to see event conversions. I'm thinking about offering something that's gated for someone's email address on my website, like a lead magnet, maybe a white paper, a presentation that they can read. And I would like to know how many people are clicking on it versus coming to the site and then choosing not to. I want to see, how effective does it essentially work. That information isn't really going to be too monumental for my business. It's not going to influence any of my marketing campaigns, just a piece of information I think would be useful. But yeah, I am considering adding Plausible onto my site to track that.
Rick, before anybody else want to?
Sure, I'll ask you a question. Actually, I have two questions. I guess the first one is, it's kind of funny that the two leaders that you mentioned will import UA data, but for some reason Google will not. Do you have any backstory on why that is? Like why they won't provide that compatibility?
No, I don't have a clear backstory on that. Google they have a habit of just burning things to the ground. Personally,
Angular.
I'm still annoyed that back in like 2013, they bought what I considered to be the best music streaming app, folded into Google Music, and killed it. Still a little salty about that. And I think for them, this is totally my conjecture. I think for them, it was like, well, we're turning it off. We have this new, better thing. Also, they are essentially pretending that their new iteration of analytics is more privacy focused. It's not, it's still invasive, but in a new way. It's just packaged up differently. It's like instead of a cookie, it's like a brownie. We'll say it's still a baked good. And I think them drawing that delineation in a way is them being like, oh, well, see, we're not even looking at that data anymore. They also want people to use a tool called Looker Studio in conjunction with Google Analytics. So in the old Google Analytics, you used to be able to generate all of these nice reports that you could look at and export. Currently, you cannot really do that easily in the new Google Analytics. You have to use this other tool that they offer called Looker Studio. And at that point, I don't know how much of it was like personal choice. They just like didn't feel like baking it all in versus any actual technical limitations they encountered. But that's a long answer to say I don't have a specific backstory.
That's good. Thanks. And let me ask you one other question too about the Matomo again, the one you said that was open source. So are there open source standards for like data analytics, database structures? Is that what they're working when they call it open source? That means possibly maybe more than one company might be using the same database structure, if nothing else. Do you know anything about that? Can you say anything about that? Like
So I
industry
am
standard?
not any
Yeah.
kind of a software engineer, so I can't go too deep into that. I know that there are several standards and protocols that software needs to follow in order to be open source. And
Yeah.
there are probably going to be forks of it out there, so you're going to be able to go get the original code from Matomo. It is
Right.
possible that another company downloads it, modifies it, forks it, and sells it as their own proprietary version. I can't speak to whether or not that has happened. That is something that if that was something that you're really interested in or concerned about, that is something that the Matomo team might be able to provide more insight on.
Thank you.
You're
Great.
welcome. And one other thing I want to mention is if you are interested in what people are searching for to find you online, like not what's happening on your website, but just like what are people looking for? Like what searches am I showing up as a result in? You don't need Google Analytics to do that. There's another tool that you all may or may not have used before called Google Search Console. There's no code that goes on your website or anything. It's just really they're just showing you a report of what keywords you appeared in the search for, and that's very useful as well for marketing.
Nice.
Emily, is that the one where it's sending out emails like this isn't working, or I've been getting kind of notifications like what is it, or some things aren't indexable. Is that's Google search? Okay.
Yeah, Google search, once you set up Google Search Console, it walks you through step by step, like how to set it up when you launch it for the first time in your browser. It will send you alerts if there's some pages on your website that the search engines aren't able to index, like they aren't able to like read them and show them and know where to show them at certain times.
How about Google Ads? If you have a client that's interested in running Google Ads, are they? I know one of the things that that's nice about analytics is that it does integrate with ads, and so you're able to optimize your advertising based on what's going on your website. Is there anything like that available for the other platforms that you're aware of?
So as far as I know, it would depend on how you're setting up your ads. So I don't work with paid advertising. I know in the past, it was possible that you could create your own tracked links that are going in the ad. And so if you have control over being able to like, copy the ad link, or like, I'm not explaining this well. Basically, if I have my website, I could say, okay, rather than just have it be egcreativecontent.com being in the ad, I'm going to add /UTM ? 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can put those links in the ads, then you can still track them in Plausible and Fathom and Matomo, because it lets you identify customized links like that you want to track how many are actually coming through to your website. So you'd have to look at your Google Ads portal in order to see how much your spend was, how often you were winning the ad auction, but then you could see how many of those ads were actually leading to completed clicks on your website using one of the analytics tools. For that would be a little cumbersome if you were running a very large ad campaign. So again, it kind of goes back to that site size. Like if you are, say, running a large e-commerce site where you're running tons of like Google ads and shopping ads, it is probably going to be easiest to stay within the Google ecosystem for that. If you run a small business and you want to appear maybe in just a few local searches that are happening, you only have maybe a handful of ads, then yes, I believe you could track those using Plausible. They do have documentation about how to set that up on their website. Unfortunately, I'm not a paid ads person anymore.
Right. Also, yeah, I was just also kind of talking about how, you know, Google Ads has that feature which is optimized for conversions. So it actually will look at the conversions on your site and then optimize your ad based on the conversions, as my understanding. But yeah, that may be only appropriate if you really kind of want to stick within the Google.
Yeah, and it would depend on whether or not at this point you're able to see the conversions. Can Google Ads, can your ads portal track those conversions, or do you have to have Google Analytics installed? And I do not know the answer to that, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no worries. One other question. Sorry, I don't want to hog, but I did have one
No,
other
go right
question.
ahead.
Great, go for it.
Is what of the solutions that you've looked at, which one seems to be the easiest for clients like who are non-technical? So I'd say, you know what, this might be a good a good solution for you. They can get into it and they don't have to really know how to do much with analytics. Is there anyone that you would point to that would be the easiest for non-technical questions? No, not non-technical clients.
Yeah, I think Fathom and Plausible are tied for that. Those are the two that I would recommend to clients. I know some web developers who happen to recommend Fathom a lot to their clients. Plausible is pretty much neck and neck. So I think some of that would come down to your personal preference. Which one, as you, the consultant, is there one that has a few features maybe you prefer or not? Like Plausible is a little more privacy compliant. So it comes down to, you know, how necessary that is to you. But both of them would be totally great for clients. I think with one like quick training session, like maybe have like a 40-minute meeting with them, tell them what some different terms mean, show them around the portal, they're going to be able to understand it from there. And it's going to be a lot easier for them than Google Analytics is or was.
Awesome, thanks.
Hey, Omari, let me ask you a question, would you?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, actually, I was just curious about something you said in passing, Emily, about how you're no longer a paid ads person. So how would I interpret that? Are you saying that you're able to achieve internet presence and goals for your clients without paid ads? Or are you saying, well, those are still an important element of the strategy, but someone else is doing it besides you? Or could you tell me more about that, please?
Sure. So I am able to achieve internet presence and rank for my clients without ads. Now, there are still some instances where ads can be necessary. Once again, going back to the shopping, if you're selling products, like a high volume of products, you are probably going to need to run ads because there's so many different tools that Google offers for e-commerce sites. There's Google Shopping, there's the regular Google ads. There's some new features that are rolling out over the next few months in their new and revamped search experience. Now, I don't work with e-commerce clients anymore. If I still did, I would definitely have someone else working on some ads. For my clients now, some of them do choose to run some ads in search separate from what I do with them. However, I am able to develop content strategies and create the content and monitor it in a way that we are appearing at the very top of search results for a vast array of terms that they no longer would need to run an ad for. It would be redundant, actually, for them to run an ad.
Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.